Hello and welcome to another edition of AttractWell Office Hours. I'm Coach Ashley, joined today by Julie from our team. Hey, Julie.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about creating presentations that convert. And so we're going to be getting into the specifics of creating slide decks, strategies to create them, and then of course, ultimately how you will use those slide decks with AttractWell to deliver presentations live as well as recordings that you can put into your content and your courses. So we've got a lot to get into today. Buckle up. And of course, as always, we welcome your questions, even if they have nothing to do with today's content. We are a live session here every Thursday at 2 p.m. US Eastern Time. It's an opportunity to not only learn about how to use AttractWell to grow your consulting, coaching, course, or other type of business, it's also an awesome opportunity to learn things like you will be learning today, which are a little bit more adjacent to AttractWell and the way that you grow your business. So again, really thrilled to have you here. As you're coming in, let us know where in the world you are. Who do you serve? How do you serve them? We're always interested to hear more from the folks who choose to be here. And again, we're so honored that you would spend this time with us. If there are things that you would like to learn about, we welcome you to submit those requests. This is actually a topic that we chose today based on a question that was asked in our Facebook group, in our AttractWell Facebook group this week. So, you ask a question, we may even go into greater depth for you. So let me just make sure I've got all of my ducks in a row here. There we go. So I can be answering your questions as we go through this. I've got some slides that we're going to get into here today, and we definitely have an opportunity to get into some show and tell. So if you want to kind of pick apart a little bit of even what I'm doing, because this is a little bit meta here. I'm using a slide deck to teach you how to make slide decks. We could certainly get into that with you as well. Ask away as we're going through this. And of course, if you're looking for specific help with something else, Julie is here and in the chat. So again, welcome. Thrilled to have you. Julie and I are going to pop out of videos so that we can get into these slides I've got prepared for you. All right, here we go. See if Zoom will let me do this. Just a second. There it is. All right, perfect. So as I mentioned, today we are talking about presentations that convert, how you can create them and use them with AttractWell. So this is going to be for meetings, for videos, and so much more. Really anything that you need a slide deck for, this will help. All right, so today we're going to talk about first a 5-step presentation process or checklist. These are ultimately the steps that you want to make sure that you follow in order to create a great slide deck. And then we'll talk about how you can present that slide deck and share it with using your AttractWell system. And as always, we will get into live help and Q&A. Now, obviously, if you're here live on the call, you can head over to the Q&A right now and ask away any questions that you have, whether they have to do with today's subject matter or not. But if you are watching this as a recording, I want to welcome you to join us on an upcoming office hours call. You do not have to be a member of AttractWell to do so. It's actually a great opportunity to kind of learn a little bit about us and see if we might be a fit for your business, ask your questions, etc. So go to attractwell.com/office hours and join us on an upcoming live Zoom call. We are live every Thursday at 2 p.m. US Eastern Time. And if you would like to set aside dedicated time, if you're an AttractWell member and you want to work together on something, you want to get into your account together perhaps and work on the formatting of something or your strategy or something to that effect, we welcome this as well. It's totally free. attractwell.com/work review will save you some space at the closing part of these calls. They are an hour long, and we tend to dedicate the second half to these live work opportunities. And if you would like for someone else to do some of this stuff for you, please, by all means, reach out. attractwell.com/concierge is where you're going to want to go to learn more about our team, as well as set up a call where you can explore options and get a quote. All right, so whether you are here because you are creating courses, giving talks, creating content for your brand, or selling online, or maybe even onboarding your clients, every brand, every business needs at least one good slide deck. Everybody needs one. Everybody needs a good set of slide decks, right? So let's talk about the process that we'll follow to create a slide deck. And then of course, we'll get into what it looks like to share it. So these are the things that we need to cover. These are the 5 things we need to check off our list here. We first need to establish our objective. So what do we want our slide deck to do for our business? Who is this for? What are we going to say in it? What is it that we want folks to take action on after they watch it? And then ultimately, we need to go through the process of creating the deck itself. So let's begin with objective. What is the purpose of your presentation? So in establishing the objective, it's going to fall into one of three categories. It is either going to fulfill the objective of branding yourself as an expert and generating leads for you. So this would be, as an example, maybe you give public talks, maybe you've been invited to present somewhere, but they don't want you pitching from stage. You would be providing some kind of a slide deck as the basis where you deliver value, and then perhaps you're able to offer a QR code where people can go and take advantage of a download you're offering or something to that effect, right? So branding and lead generation. Another way that this shows up is virtually, where you might have long form content. So if you are breaking down a more complex explanation of something, you might use a slide deck for this purpose. And this is great for something like YouTube. And again, in this case, you're not going to be pitching on YouTube. It's just really not a great place to pitch, but it is a really great place to establish your brand's authority, and of course, to have a link in the description to use to generate leads. Sales is another really critical objective. You're going to find that slide decks are indispensable where it comes to selling, particularly online. So sales slide decks may be used for live presentations, as well as for recorded videos that you might use on a sales page or elsewhere in your sales funnel. Then we also have client or customer education, or the delivery of whatever it is that you are selling, right? So this could be your onboarding, so videos for onboarding, or recordings that you basically, if you're going to have like a live one-on-one or group session for onboarding, or if you want to record a video, as well as videos for your online courses, you would want to use slide decks for those as well. And if you're offering a live program of some kind, then of course you would want to use slide decks for that too. All right. Now, the next thing that we want to take into account is our audience. Not only who is this presentation for, but why would they want to listen? What will this do for them? What is important about this to them, right? We have to remember at the end of the day, creating a deck and delivering it is not a demonstration of what we know. It is a demonstration, or an exercise rather, in us connecting what we know to what the person we want to sell to or affect in some way wants. How can we give them what they want and influence an action? That's the purpose of your slide deck, right? Unless you are creating a slide deck as an academic, your slide deck has a greater objective than just demonstrating your knowledge, right? So let's establish our audience first by picking one of these three. Again, we got three categories here that our audience is going to fall into. We've got a general audience. So that's going to be someone who shows up at a local talk that you're giving, perhaps people who stumble upon your content on social media, right? So these are generalized. These are not your email list subscribers, for instance. They may be social media subscribers. We hope that they will become that, but general audience, not targeted, or maybe not highly targeted. Then we've got our qualified leads. These are our targeted audience. So the difference between these two, where we've got our sort of anybody who could find your stuff, is that you're not going to give a hard sell, right? You're not going to pitch, a fairly pricey offering of yours to just a general audience. You want to make sure that gets in front of only qualified leads, because you're wasting both of your time if the person isn't qualified, right? So a qualified lead is going to be someone who has indicated specific interest. So they've done this by signing up for an event where you're going to be delivering this presentation. Maybe they signed up for something else on your website, such as a lead magnet that you're offering in a funnel. Maybe you're networking and they have expressed specific interest to you directly, right? So qualified leads are folks who are qualified to be sold to, right? So you're going to be addressing that audience slightly differently. And then finally, your clients or customers, if someone who has purchased from you, you are maybe delivering something that they bought, right? Such as a course or the sort of value for the services that you provide. Next thing we want to do is outline our content. So what are the things we are going to actually be sharing or talking about, the points that we'll be making in our presentation? So this will always begin with a promise, right? When someone decides to give you their time, you need to state up front here's what you're going to get for being here. Right? We want to honor the time that they're giving us. So we want to tell them what they're going to get out of this. This could be as simple as a brief agenda slide, such as what you see at the beginning of this call, right? And what we do every week, where I say, here's what we're going to talk about today. This is the order of operations for today, right? Or you could say some kind of a deliverable. So if you're doing like a sales video, you're going to say, stick around. I promise you that by the end of, and you don't have to say promise, but we can say, I promise you by the end of this video, you're going to walk away with 3 ways to address this problem. And you're going to feel this way about it, right? That's a promise. And you want to state that at the beginning because you're creating a compelling reason for someone to actually stick around and finish. The majority of videos that are created and posted, especially if you're putting this out there for the general public, are not attended to completion. The majority of videos are not watched in their entirety. So it is really important that you give a compelling promise for someone to pay attention for the entire time. If someone is sitting there in front of you, if you were in a room, if you were giving a talk, addressing a room, it's critical that you do this as well. Because what could somebody do in the middle of this? They don't necessarily need to leave the room to leave the attention that they were giving you and maybe get their face into their phone, right? Or start daydreaming and thinking about something else. So you want a compelling promise. What will they get out of sticking around for this presentation? Then you want to engage. Essentially, the idea here, because obviously you are the one that's giving this presentation, you want to make it feel like a conversation. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to ask the audience to say something, because that might not always be appropriate, or it might not make the most logical sense, such as, if you're recording for what will be a video someone will watch later, they can't speak to you, right? But you do want to evoke the feeling that they're having a conversation with you. This needs to be less of you standing at a podium and giving a presentation, and more of you facilitating at a round table. So the way that you are providing this information needs to be one that feels a little bit more conversational. And I should note here as well, there was a question that came up in response to this topic going out about incorporating specific types of engagement into online courses. I want to make sure we will address that at the close of our slides here, because it does speak a little bit more to how you structure your online courses. But that is another option as well, right? So if you wanted to include something that's a bit more interactive inside of a course, there are additional options here. But right now we're sticking just to the presentation. Now, then you want to have your main points, right? So what is it that you're actually going to talk about? You want to make sure this is in sequential order so that you are organized in how you're delivering this. Then you need context. And context specifically, this is why each of these points that you're making is relevant to the person that's receiving them, to your audience. So essentially what you're going to do here is each time you make a main point, you're going to want to provide context. So you're providing content in your main points, and you're providing context alongside it. So as an example, if you are speaking to women in their 40s about fatigue, and you are a health coach or you are a practitioner of some kind, first in the content, you need to maybe address from a definition type perspective, right? You want to address what is fatigue, maybe what are the causes of it, the mechanisms of how fatigue is experienced in the body. But the context here is how you make it make sense to the person that you're speaking to. So if we're speaking to an athlete in their 20s about fatigue, it's going to be a different conversation in terms of context than it is if you're speaking to a woman in her 40s who is experiencing adrenal fatigue or thyroid issues, et cetera, right? So you're going to want to give context that's relevant to your audience. This is, of course, something that's going to make this more engaging by default because you aren't showing up and behaving like Wikipedia or a dictionary. You are really delivering on something that's highly personal to the person that is there. Then, of course, you want to provide supporting information. And this is something that grows in increasing importance for you the colder the audience is. So if these are folks who have already purchased from you, you don't necessarily need to provide quite as much of the receipts, if you will, quote, stats, case studies, testimonials. If somebody's already purchased, you don't necessarily need this in your course content to the same degree that you do if you're putting something out there on YouTube, or you are presenting, maybe a sales presentation that's going to be on a video on your website, right? So the less an audience knows you and trusts you, the more important it is that you provide this additional information for each of these points that you're making. Now we need a call to action, because what is the point of creating and delivering a slide deck in the first place? We want something to happen as a result of it. So we need to define what that is. Obviously, it's going to be highly tied to our objective. I'm going to give you 3 specific options. You're typically not going to find many outside of these use cases. I'm happy to discuss them with you if you feel yours is different. The first is to have them sign up for a lead magnet you're offering, or to have them subscribe. This is going to be when your objective is branding, so establishing yourself as an authority, maybe creating content in video format online, or if you are looking to generate leads from that same content, or from a talk that you're giving where you can't make a direct pitch from your presentation. And generally speaking, it's going to be a general audience, right? If it's a targeted audience, you're going to want to have a more targeted call to action than get on my list, because if they're targeted, they're probably already on your list, right? And we definitely don't need to have our existing customers and clients subscribe or sign up for a lead magnet. So that's what this looks like. Now, the second one is take this step, do this thing next to buy. This is a buy now call to action, and we want to tell them what to do. So this is going to be slightly different based on the mechanism you're using to share your slide deck, the environment that you're in, et cetera, right? So if this is going to be a video that is on a page, then you're going to say, click the link below, click the button below, et cetera. If this is something that is delivered live, then you're going to say, click the link in the description, or maybe you have the link shown on the slide. So go to this link and purchase. If you are maybe sitting with someone one-on-one, maybe you've done a discovery call and you're kind of going through a slide deck here for your discovery call, then you may just have a call to action to get started now, right? So the objective for take the step to purchase, of course, is going to be to sell something. And the audience for this is going to be your qualified leads. Again, these are people who are already on your list, or who you have qualified in some other way to deem it appropriate to give them sales messaging. And then finally, we have the do this next, right? Or follow these steps to implement what you just learned. And the objective here is going to be very client customer based. It's going to be, we're getting you started with working with me. You're going to learn this at this stage of this course, et cetera, right? And so that's going to be for people who have purchased from you, your clients and customers. Generally speaking, all of your call to actions are going to fall into one of these 3 categories for these 3 different types of audiences. Now, all the stuff we've talked about so far, our objective, audience, outline, call to action, this is something that we need to compile into a single outline before we start creating slides. The easiest way to get in our own way, especially if you are not well versed in the sort of creative process where it comes to creating slide decks, creating video content, things like that, is to not know exactly what you want to do in the order you want to do it before you show up to do the thing, right? You need to come in with a plan, or you might wind up all over the place. Some of us are really good at seat of our pants stuff, but that's not a very duplicable thing to do. Like, you might have success with it a few times, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best way to go moving forward. So highly, highly recommend you use an outline for this. You guys know I'm a great big proponent for outlines. All right, so let's talk about creating our slide deck. You've created your outline, and I'll actually show you guys what mine looks like here in just a bit. I actually created an outline before building this slide deck that you're seeing here today. So I'll go a little meta with it. So when it's time to create your slide deck, first we want to consider the software that we'll use, because you will be using a specialized software for this. We're going to talk about branding your slide deck, which is very important. The images that you'll use, critical as well, and formatting, which, if done correctly, will save you tons of time and will allow you to basically take the work that you put into creating one awesome slide deck and allow you to replicate that work over and over again, so that you don't have to spend that same amount of time every time you need to present. Now, presentation software, I'm going to give you a caveat here. I am someone who creates many presentations per week for multiple purposes, actually all of the use cases that we've discussed here today. So that's giving a talk where we don't pitch anything, making content for a video where we do pitch something, and of course, creating educational content. Every week, I'm creating multiples of those things, including the slides that you're seeing right now. As someone who creates a large volume of presentations, I 100% prefer using software that is created for the purpose of presenting. Are there other options? Are there cloud-based things? Are there many ways you could do this thing? Yes. I'm sharing with you today how I get this done in very little time and keep it very effective and clean. So take from that what you will. All right. So my recommendation for presentation software is PowerPoint or Keynote. I'm on a Mac, so I use Keynote. PowerPoint you could use, I think, on Mac or a Windows-based machine. So totally up to you, your preference. They work more or less identically. I will say, sorry to the more into Mac crowd than I am, and I'm pretty into Mac. PowerPoint is slightly better presentation software, as are most of the softwares for word processing, including Excel, number processing. They're just, Microsoft makes better software. But that said, both of these work interchangeably and work very well. And what you see me using here every week is Keynote. These are also, because they are presentation software, they work beautifully, easily, simply, without needing to do a bunch of weird steps with Zoom, right? It's very easy to present with Zoom and because they're built for presenting. These are made to do one thing and they do it well, all right? But there is another option. And for those of you who value style highly, if you are most concerned with, or it's, very high on your list that it's very slick and, the images, et cetera, like if you've got like a brand prerogative here and the visuals are most important to you, then you might consider Canva. I don't recommend it for presentations though. And so the good reason to use Canva would be because your branding is already there and they have gorgeous templates. And so you can make things that look really pretty. They just are kind of difficult and clunky to present with on Zoom, right? And if, God forbid, you get into, you're on stage and you need to, play your presentation situation, that's going to get even more complicated if you're trying to use Canva to present. So if you want to kind of best of both worlds if you really like the designs you can create in Canva, my recommendation would be to create the individual slides and export them as images in Canva and plug those images into your Zoom, your PowerPoint or Keynote presentations. That way, you kind of get the best of both worlds in terms of form and function. Now let's talk about branding a little bit. This is going to be really simple for you regardless of which software you choose. But you want to make sure that regardless of where you're building this, that the brand fonts that you've already chosen that you use for your brand are showing up throughout the slide deck, right? So ours are congruent across the board here. Like this is the same font face. Of course, we use a slightly different one for the office hours part, so branding the content here. But our AttractWell logo and the actual font is the same font face here, and we keep it consistent throughout all of the slides. I want to encourage you, especially if your content is going to be showing up in the public domain, if you're going to be on YouTube, this is going to be something that's widely visible to people who don't know you. Brand your slides with your logo and maybe even a title of what the content is. So as you see here, and you've seen throughout this presentation, AttractWell Office Hours is down here at the bottom. So these are our office hours. That's the name of the content. And of course, you see our logo here where we're saying it's the AttractWell Office Hours. This goes on YouTube. We want people to remember that this exists and to see it as being familiar if it shows up as recommended in their YouTube browsing, right? And so this is really effective here, but it's also going to be important if you are speaking on stage, maybe you're speaking to people who are not familiar with you. And even still, if you're creating course content, et cetera, then it's always going to be a nice thing to kind of have your stamp on the work that you're doing. If you are using colors, be sure that those are consistent with your branding, right? So don't go, super far outside of the brand palette that you've established unless it's for functional reasons. So as an example, you'll see this here shortly. Maybe you need to use an arrow to point to something or a shape to frame something. Using bright red in that instance is actually the most effective thing to do. Maybe you want to put something that looks like a button onto your slide. Buttons that are red are kind of proven to be more likely to be clicked, et cetera. So you do have options where that's concerned, but don't go too far off on your colors. Now for images, and this is really important, and I'll show you some examples here in a second. You want to make sure that you're using royalty-free images, and unless you want to pay for them, which, by all means do if you wish. You can find the royalty-free images on Unsplash and Canva. Both of those have them. And then you want to make sure that you're using large enough resolution sizes to fit your slides. We'll talk about the slide proportions in the next slide here. And then this is for those of you who are creating sales videos and sales presentations in particular. Make sure that the image that you're using, if you are going to have like a great big image that's attached to the background of a slide, use your images in your slides as a means to evoke points or evoke emotions, right? As opposed to a literal depiction. The reason you want to do this is if you're trying to influence action, then you need to really get the person who is watching involved in the emotional arc of what you're talking about. Now, you could have, an image of a very frustrated man's face, right? If you're talking about, do you feel frustrated? But you're going to lose someone there more so than if you had a stormy weather image, like some, thunder and lightning, right? If you had some kind of a scene that is evocative of that emotion versus what feels like a literal depiction. And the reason for this is people want to see themselves in the conversation, right? People want to relate. We relate ourselves. Our ego wants to relate ourselves to the sort of topic at hand. And if it looks like someone else, for instance, in that example I just gave, it's not going to resonate as deeply as it could otherwise, right? So I'll show you what images could look like in slides here in just a moment. Let's talk about formatting though. Before we get to that, make sure that your presentation is set up as widescreen. That's 16:9. This is something that you can set up in Canva, and it is a document setting in both Keynote and PowerPoint. And then I want you to create just a couple of templates that you can reuse, right? So these are 3 different templates. That's a title slide, a list slide, and an impact slide. Let's take a look at what those look like. This is the title slide where we've got nice big bold font for the title. We can have subtitles here. I've put that in italics. They don't necessarily have to be italicized. And you can, of course, play around with how big the font is here and how you have it set up. But the idea is that if you've got multiple sections where you're going to be talking about different things, as I've done on today's deck, you want to keep things visually consistent, right? That's going to help people retain their grasp on attention to what you're doing, right? So keep it visually congruent. This is a list slide where we've got a title up at the top. You put your points in bullets. You can use animations on slides. This is another reason why I prefer the options that are not Canva, because animations in Canva you can certainly do. It's just tedious. It's really tedious. And this is very simple and intuitive. So set up animations here to allow one bullet to appear at a time. And just be sure, if you're using a list slide, be mindful of how much content that you put on a slide like this one. Less is more. You can be very visually overwhelming. And again, that's going to impact how well people pay attention to what you are showing and saying. Now, this is an impact slide. I don't know if anybody else calls it this. I call it this. And I feel like it's for obvious reasons. If you want to say something that makes an impact, you want to use a slide like this. Way back in the day, in the beginning of video sales letters, a guy that some of y'all might have heard about named Frank Kern was the absolute best at doing this. And almost all of the slides in his videos would be like this. He would just go through little blips of words where it would show up. Here's just a few words on the screen. And they're super effective to make a point because there's nothing else visually competing with the information on the slide. Now, these impact slides are going to be really powerful for you to use. If you're someone who feels like you need presenter notes, like a script, then of course, by all means, make sure you're using those because you don't want these to necessarily represent literally what you're saying, right? Obviously it can be. You don't want to come across like a robot. So these impact slides actually work really well with image backgrounds, as you see here. Just make sure that the text is legible, right? So you can see I was using black here, And I'm using white here with a nice color behind it. I'll show you guys how to create that here in just a bit. But those are really effective for your impact slides. If you want to kind of have, you can have an entire presentation of impact slides if you choose, right? Super, super effective like this. And actually for sales videos or sales letters, these are fantastic because you can really kind of tap into emotion with those images, really tell stories, etc. When you're selling, I think you want to use a lot less of the bullet points, right? All right, now let's talk about how, once you've got your slides created, you will present them using AttractWell. So if you want to go live with your slides, you're going to use PowerPoint or Keynote, ideally. In this case, I'm going to show you how to use either of these, and we'll talk about Canva in a moment. You're going to open your presentation, and you're going to then also open Zoom in AttractWell. Then you're going to select Share Screen with Zoom, and then select your presentation. Make sure you are not going full screen, especially if you are hosting a Zoom, right? If you're not just doing this as a video recording, and if you are someone who wants to have sort of your script, your presenter notes appear as you are presenting. So no full screen, make sure you select the presentation itself, and then you can get started with presenting. This is what that looks like. And note that I've got this bright red arrow, right? This is not one of our brand colors, but bright red is really great to draw the eye. So I have clicked share on Zoom here, and you can see I've got entire screen or application windows. In this case, I'm going to the application window for my presentation software, and I'm going to go from there, right? Now, if you want to present your slides live using Canva, it is a little bit more complicated. So you're going to open your presentation, you're going to open Zoom just like we did before. Again, we're going to select share screen with Zoom as we did before, and then you're going to select advanced and then indicate that you're going to use a portion of your screen for screen sharing. You'll then use the provided window they give you to kind of drag onto your screen what you want to be shown and frame your presentation with that box, and then you can get on with presenting. So basically that looks like this. You click share, and then you go up to the top here in the dialog that pops up, go to advanced, and then look for portion of screen. From there, you'll be able to drag that over and put it exactly where you want it on your screen. Now note, if anything else pops up on your screen that might obstruct the view or interrupt the view of that, it will show up, right? If you want to have your you're going to have that maybe in a browser window, of course, because it's Canva. If for whatever reason you minimize the browser, it's then just going to be showing an awkward space on your screen, right? So this is kind of a reason why I tend to advocate for using the presentation software over Canva for this. But this is definitely doable. All right, now if you're presenting for video, so you are going to present, but you want to record it so that you can use it on your website or in your courses, what you want to do is follow the steps that I just outlined based on the software that you're using, and then record your presentation to the cloud. So use the record to cloud option in Zoom whenever you're ready. Then when you're done, you're going to stop the recording, or you can just end the Zoom call. And when the upload is done, uploading into your AttractWell system, you're going to find it in your Zoom meetings under the button that's called My Recordings. Now from there, you can very easily click the link that's provided once it's done processing to export that video to your video manager, where you can then use it wherever you like on your site. All right, so let's get into some live help and Q&A. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask away. What I would like to do briefly first is actually show the presentation that that I have, so we can just kind of get into the nuts and bolts of kind of what I do here. First, actually, before I do that, this is the outline that I used, right? So here are the main points that we're talking about, right? So I practice what I preach here, queen of outlines. And it's because of the way my brain works. It helps. As a creative person who wants to say everything, do everything, address everything, I find that if I am just open-ended when I embark on something, it either won't start or it will be never ending, right? I don't know if any of you relate to that. So going into a creative endeavor with structure in mind is going to behoove you, especially if you are a creative person. All right, so let's take a look here. So we're actually in the slides here in Keynote. I use a title slide like this at the beginning of any of my presentations. And this isn't the same kind of title slide I shared with you. It is one that's a bit more involved. We've got an image here in the background, which I actually have locked. I think, yeah, the background image is locked here. So I can unlock that and show you. I can actually move that around. I believe this came from Canva, that image did. We've got, different levels of opacity on different things. So here's a box here that I created using shapes. Gave it, a little bit less of an opaque look, so you can see some of the background image through it, and the same up here at the top. So this is really just how I brand this type of content. If you have a series of content, or perhaps this is for a course, then you may have something like this that you use and modify slightly for each of the presentations that you create for that series or for that course. You can see we've got a title slide, we've got impact slides such as these, and then of course our content slides where we actually get into our lists. Now there is an animate function here in Keynote. I've chosen here to animate by object and to deliver that by bullet. So that just basically means that if I am presenting this slide, I will be able to go like this, right? So you aren't showing everything all at once. If you are actually showing a list, then I can't recommend enough that you use that animation feature, because you are going to be able to get people's attention and keep it better if you're really only talking about one thing at a time, right? Let me see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, let's get into how I constructed a slide like this one. So this is what I would call an impact slide. And the way that I created it was by finding an image in Canva that I liked and then attaching it to the background of this slide. So let's go and take a look at that. I'm going to create a new slide. I'm actually just I'm going to use this one that we already have, and we're going to turn that into an impact slide with a nice image background. So I'm going to go to Canva, and you can actually just type in presentation. Here, I'm going to go to create. I'm going to type in presentation. And you can see that it has a 16:9 option here. That's what we want. And I want a nice background image here. So I'm going to go to elements. Here's the one that I actually chose. And this may actually be relevant to you guys if you want to see a cool little hack here. I'm going to set this image as the background here. And I'm going to go to share and then download. And I'm going to choose to download this as a JPEG. You could use PNG as well. I don't think it would be significantly different one way or the other. I want to take this all the way up to 100% quality. I really do want this to be large enough. And I'm going to go to download. Now, this apparently is a premium image, right? What we see right here, premium image, and it can't be exported on its own. That's a new thing that I've never seen with Canva before. So it requires some amount of text. Good thing we've got lots of options. So I'm just going to take this. It says body, and you actually probably saw that in the presentation that I gave. Just go ahead and make that a similar color to something else on the page. Shrink it up as much as you like, and it's probably not going to be visible where it's showing on your screen, or if you're going to have like that nice long or wide rather image over the top of it, you could certainly make that change there. But I'm just going to stick this down here where it's not really visible and try that again, right? So we're going to download it and make that an image. And of course, if you have trouble with this, you could certainly always create. It's not recognizing my text here. Anyway, you could always grab another image if you have issues with that, which I'm going to go ahead and do here for the sake of expediency. So again, I'm 2-finger clicking on a trackpad. You could right click on a mouse, set the image as background, and then you're going to share that by downloading to your device as an image file. That's PNG or JPG. There we go. So I'm going to download that, and let's go back over to our presentation, and I'll show you exactly what we'll do. All right, let me go back over to this. All right, so I've got that in my downloads. Here it is. I'm going to drag it over. Now I need to send this to the back so you can layer. So I'm again, 2 fingers on a trackpad or right click on a mouse, send to back. Now, this is not really visible enough for me, right? So what I want to do is change the color of the text. So let me go back over here to format text and make that white. And maybe I want to make sure this is all visible too. Now I've already done this in another slide. So let me just grab this all real quick. I'm going to copy this and let me delete what's here because it's not what I want. I'm going to paste that there. So I've got another version of the logo and the text so that it shows up more nicely. And maybe I kind of want to have a little bit more contrast between the text and the image. So in that case, I'm going to create a shape. I'm going to stretch it to fit over completely and maybe give a little coverage on top and bottom the text that I have on the screen. I'm going to send it to the back and then send my image to the back again as well. And then remember, we want to be in keeping with our brand coloring. And the cool thing about Keynote in particular is that you actually have the ability to save colors to your palette here. So I can actually grab this AttractWell color here. Voila. Maybe I want to, play around with this some more, give it a drop shadow. I can maybe blur that a little bit. So yeah, you can play around with that. You can even maybe play around with the opacity of the blur or of the color of the object itself, right? So there we go. So you can play around with that and kind of give it a 3D lift, to your heart's content. But remember, when you are creating these slide decks, substance comes before style, right? So it's really important that you are making the points that you need to make. You're giving context to the content so that the person who is receiving this information feels it the way that they need to, and then can respond to it the way that you want them to, right? So yeah, I am very excited to see what kind of questions we have. And then if you are here, let me see, I think we did have one person signed up for a live review, but they mentioned they might not be able to make it. So Sudi, if you are here, please do raise your hand, let us know, and we'd be happy to bring you out. All right, Ricky has a question. I've set up a weekly Zoom meeting every Friday, but I'm not sure I have the campaign working properly. I'm using the template campaign and I've set it to start on a Saturday or immediately when someone registers, then follows up on Thursday, day 5, and an hour before, day 6, then replay on day 7. Should I add the campaign to the profile of each contact to make sure they get weekly reminders, even if they don't register? I had some issues last week with emails going out on the wrong days for some contacts. Okay. Got you. So Ricky, would you be okay with coming out to chat about this briefly? Because I have a couple of follow-up questions for you for me to be able to actually answer that effectively. Do let me know. And before I bring you out really quick, forgive me, let me see. To the question that was asked prior, remember you guys can ask questions ahead of time. Okay, so Michael Rowell wanted to know how, in terms of making presentations more interactive, incorporating things like quizzes at the end of your slides to keep engagement going inside of, say, an online course. So it's adjacent topically here. There's a couple of ways that you can incorporate that. I think that the simplest way to do this in AttractWell would be to ask an either or question and give a call to action to leave the answer in the comments. Right, to leave their answer in the comments. And then you might reveal the, and ask them to do that while they're watching the video. Then you might reveal the answer maybe at the very end of the presentation. That would be my most expedient option, recommendation for you. You do have the option as well to use quiz specific software and incorporate that into AttractWell. So like Try Interact, I think it's just interact.com, I think. But that's an option as well. You could embed the form for that into that lesson page. And you could even, through Zapier, use automations to maybe not allow that person to move to the next slide until they have completed that quiz. So that would be the more complicated option there for you. All right, Ricky, let me bring you out to chat and yeah, let's figure out what's going on with your campaigns. Hey there.
Hi. Okay.
Yeah, so this, I guess my question for you is, for this weekly Zoom meeting, is this in perpetuity or is this for a set period of time?
In perpetuity.
Okay, okay. So then my recommendation would not be to use a campaign for the reminders and everything.
Okay.
My recommendation would be certainly to use a campaign to send a confirmation message to let them know, here's the schedule, save this link, etc. But then you would use broadcasts moving forward from that point, because you might see, shifts or changes in that schedule. Something comes up on that Wednesday and you need to change it to Thursday and so on. There's only so far in advance you could really go. So unless it's for a set period of time and it's date based, right? So if you want to, okay, how could I put this? You can do this with campaigns, but you would basically need to create maybe a year's worth of campaign messages and know what you're going to be talking about, et cetera, and have all of that, created in the campaign. But you don't
So what I'm
necessarily.
doing at the moment, I'm setting up an event for this, to get people to register. And not everybody is, but I still wanted, when people came like last week, I want to make sure they get a reminder for this week without necessarily registering.
Yes.
Because they may just forget and they may see it and assume that they're coming. So I'm just going to assume they're going to come, and I just want to I want to make sure they get a reminder on the Thursday, and they also get a reminder an hour before every week.
Yeah, perfect. So this is exactly what we do for this call that you're on today.
Right.
And we've done it the same way for years. And there is a way to work in advance here. But essentially what you want to do is when someone is signing up, right? When you're taking the registration for the call series, you want to make sure that you've got a tag that you can remember that is for the people who registered for these calls, right? That's applying to them when they sign up for the call series. And then what you want to do is filter for those contacts and schedule messages to go out at the appropriate time. So when I'm on top of everything and have some free time, which isn't always, I will schedule out a month or more's worth of calls for this series, right? And they're set, it's for a specific date and time. It's to these people who have this tag. Of course, in this case, this is those of you who have signed up for office hours. And so the reminder goes out. We've got an announcement on Monday that goes out to the whole list. There's a reminder before it goes out on Thursdays, just to the folks who signed up. So my recommendation is to actually just use broadcast messages for that. And the way that you can allow someone to opt out of that series would be to create an automation that removes that tag from the contact and allow them a way to click that link, that automation link, in those emails that send out. So you're essentially going to have a saved reply that you use for announcing the call topic, for a reminder with the Zoom link, and you're going to use those every week. And just make sure that in that template, you have that automation link included so that people can click it if they don't want to be a part of the series anymore. If they don't want to, they want to opt themselves out of that list, but maybe not off of your entire list. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So is there some help stuff on setting up broadcast?
Yeah, so we definitely have, let me actually, let's go look together. 100% I have talked about this on a previous call. We can go and find it. I think recurring live events is the subject. Let me go over to, just gonna let me show this. Okay, here we go. Okay, so in Success Academy, I believe we're going to go over here, live training and replays. So recurring events. I believe that might be the keyword here. Yep. Yep. So set up, promote, and run events is here. And I think that, yeah, that's the one that you're going to want to check out. So if you wanted to kind of get the full walkthrough slower in a way that you can kind of see what's happening and then pause and pause and repeat. I'm going to pop this into our chat here. There we go.
Okay.
That's one that you could use for reference there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I will
Yes, sure thing.
try and get that set up.
All right. Yeah, keep us posted. All right, let me see. iPhone user, I need to cut a few seconds out of the middle of a recording from a Zoom recording. What would you suggest? Oof. Julie? I just use QuickTime and trim the ends, and I hope for good takes personally. But I think it kind of depends on the platform or the operating system you use. But Julie, you're pretty good at video editing, and I think you've taught this before. So what would your recommendation
Yeah,
be?
I use Wondershare Filmora, so it's an entire film studio. So that's what I use.
Wondershare?
Wondershare Filmora.
Filmora. Okay.
Filmora.
If you could put that into the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a Mac and have used ScreenFlow for this purpose. It is in some ways intuitive to use, but I can tell you that some versions of it, and I actually haven't upgraded to the latest version because weirdly enough, my 2017 monster expensive computer is like aging out software wise. And I don't want to go buy a bunch of more software before buying a new system. But it doesn't always play nicely with Zoom. So I can take a Zoom recording and it just shows up green if I try to put it into ScreenFlow. So I can tell you that I don't recommend ScreenFlow for this. But if you are just, let's just say for instance, so AttractWell has Zoom built in, right? And if you're using Zoom and like you don't really have other video software, you don't plan to get other video software, professional video suites like ScreenFlow or like what Julie's talking about, Zoom is a fantastic option if you just need to trim the ends. You want to make sure you're downloaded to your device because we don't have editing features as of this moment in AttractWell in our video manager. And so, yeah, it's a great light option, especially if you're getting started. Before long, especially if you're going to be getting into copious amounts of video, I do recommend eventually getting some kind of a screen recording software. Again, in that case, if you aren't trying to edit a Zoom video, ScreenFlow is fantastic on Mac. It's very easy to use. And of course, Julie has graciously shared her recommendation here, this Wondershare. Is that cloud-based, Julie, or is it like a software suite on your desktop?
I downloaded onto my desktop.
Okay.
So it's not a beginner software. But
Okay.
I'm just saying that's what I use, and they're pretty user friendly. But if you just want to trim the ends off of one video, it's more than you'll need.
Yeah. I actually use 99.99% of the time. I'm just using QuickTime in Mac just to cut on these videos in particular. I'm just cutting off the first couple of minutes before we go live, which again is really easy to do in any native software. Even if you are using, say, like a mobile device, their videos, like you can trim videos without any special software in those. So every device, I think, generally is going to have some kind of native trim the front and back ends kind of capability. I hope that helps whoever you are on an iPhone. Okay, Jeanette, how differently is your experience with typical Zoom meetings versus Zoom webinars? So once upon a time, I really was not a fan of Zoom meetings, and it was because they didn't really have a lot of great controls on the meetings. So if you needed people to mute themselves, you had to keep asking them to, and they might not always necessarily do it depending on who the audience is and what their, tech proficiency is or attention span is. And I found that very disruptive and I didn't like it, and I preferred webinars. Well, now Zoom meetings, like what you get in AttractWell, have almost all of the features you would want out of a webinar, right? So you can have a co-host, you can have you can make it so that people can't unmute themselves. And you can do breakout rooms, which I actually don't know if you can do in webinars. Maybe you can, I've never done it, but you can do that in meetings too. So almost all of the capabilities are identical in terms of like functionally how someone like us here today would use it. And I think this is a product of the pandemic, and people who never would have used Zoom before now starting to use Zoom. People started to really need that capability in meetings, because you need to be able to meet with people, but also shut them all up if they're making a lot of noise, right? And that really is the main benefit of a webinar, is that you can have hundreds of people, even 1,000 people on a webinar, and all of the noise that's taking place in the attendees' respective homes is not something that you have to see, right? We preserve a really great quality for the recording. So yeah, in terms of preference, I'm really used to using webinars just because of that. But if I were starting off today, I think that I would actually prefer meetings, because on top of that, you also have this ability to see people and to meet with people and to have a more interactive experience, which I think we've come to crave a lot more, right? We don't just want to sit and listen to somebody who knows what they're talking about, just yap. Like, we want to feel like we are a participant. So I actually really like the meetings for that purpose. Hi, Peggy. Okay. I could cut the first 10 minutes off without losing a whole lot. Do it on your phone. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Whether it's on your computer, on your phone, whatever you have that your video is on, there is a fairly simple way for you to trim the ends. And maybe there's a way to trim the middle. I just don't know how to do it. Like, I would be running to Julie and asking very nicely for her to please help me, because that's not me. I can't do that. All right, let me see. Do we have any other questions or requests for reviews or anything like that? We do have just a couple more minutes if you guys have questions. Remember, you can go to attractwell.com / work review. And that is where you can go to sign up for space on a call just like this one. And let me get back over here to the Success Academy. And I want to also call your attention, if you don't know about this yet, if you're signed into AttractWell, go to your Success Academy right here. Go over here to get help from a live person. And it's going to show you all the awesome options you have access to. You can obviously always send a message to our incredible team. You can head into our Facebook group and chat with us there. You can hire our team. You can get onto office hours. You can work with me on office hours. There's also this amazing other option that a lot of folks don't know about, and that is meeting with Pam. These are small groups. They are meetings. They're not webinars like this. They are meetings. Your face is there, and she will call on you and you will work on something together. And Pam is brilliant. So be sure to take advantage of this if you haven't done so already. All right. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Let us know what you want to learn about next. We may create a training like this just for you. Till then, look forward to seeing you in our Facebook group, and we'll see you back here same time next week. Take care, everybody.